Star Trek the Motion Picture, or TMP for short, was released in 1979 and was the first Star Trek film ever made, as well as the first real follow-up to the original 1966 to 1969 television series created by Gene Roddenberry, unless you count the little-known Star Trek animated series that ran from 1973 to 1974. Star Trek the Motion Picture opens with a gentle, peaceful musical track against a sparse starfield, after which we leap into a more energetic musical score, which would later come to be associated with Star Trek The Next Generation. That first track could be said to suggest peaceful joy. That second track, perhaps the thrill of discovery and adventure. The film then presents us with two short introductory scenes, the first featuring Klingons, the second featuring Vulcans. In the Klingon scene, a group of Klingon battlecruisers encounter the unknown V'ger cloud and are mysteriously zapped away while a Federation relay station watches from a distance. This is the first time that this version of the Klingons has ever been seen in Star Trek. On the Vulcan scene, Spock is coming toward the end of his Kolinar training on planet Vulcan, a process designed to lead to the ultimate purgation of all remaining emotion. But he is unable to complete the final ritual, and the guiding priestess discovers through a mind meld that his human blood has been touched by a telepathic call coming to him from space. She announces that he has not completed Kolinar and must find his answers elsewhere. Meanwhile, Admiral Kirk is arriving at Starfleet headquarters. He meets Commander Sonak and lets him know the Enterprise will be launching ahead of schedule. He beams up to the workstation, and he and Scotty begin flying toward the Enterprise. The film takes its time admiring the Enterprise as we slowly approach, because both Kirk and the intended audience have been waiting a very long time for this majestic moment. After coming aboard the Enterprise, Kirk has a glad reunion with his old bridge crew, but he needs to go down to engineering to meet Captain Decker to let him know of the change of plans. Unfortunately, that conversation with Decker goes badly due to Kirk's careless and abrasive approach, resulting in tension between them that will carry on for the next half of the film. Commander Sonak is tragically killed in a transporter accident trying to beam up to the Enterprise, along with another crew member. Kirk assigns Decker to double as science officer in addition to his current role as acting first officer. Then the whole crew gathers so that Kirk can debrief everyone on the situation. While that's happening, they happen to receive a live transmission with updated sensor data on the V'ger cloud, but the station sending the information is then consumed and destroyed by the V'ger cloud while they watch. New crew members continue to arrive in order to complete the crew before they can launch. Lieutenant Ilia arrives, which causes Decker's head to turn because he used to know her. And then Kirk's former colleague Dr. McCoy arrives last of all, having been conscripted by Starfleet under the influence of Admiral Kirk. Now that the full crew is together, the Enterprise finally launches, which is a drawn-out climactic moment that feels like the end of a television episode or the end of a film within a film. Unfortunately, as a result of Kirk's forceful haste to get the ship launched as soon as possible, they are suddenly plunged into a dangerous phenomenon which they refer to as wormhole effect, which they will later find out was the result of engine imbalance. They find there's an asteroid that has been pulled into the wormhole with them. Kirk gives the order to destroy it with a phaser blast, but Decker countermands the order and guides Chekhov to destroy it with a photon torpedo, after which the wormhole effect immediately subsides. Kirk meets with Decker apart from everyone else and demands to know why Decker countermanded his orders. Decker explains that because of the details of the Enterprise's refit, trying to use the phasers in that situation would have either been useless or even destructive. Kirk is startled and he commends Decker for making the right call, but a few moments later he accuses Decker of constantly trying to compete with him. Decker calmly observes that he feels that Kirk's rustiness and unfamiliarity with the new Enterprise is seriously endangering their mission. Kirk gets a hold of himself and asks Decker to help him with that weakness, and after Decker agrees and they smile at one another, Kirk dismisses him. Once Decker is gone, McCoy suggests, to Kirk's surprise, that Decker may be right, and he eventually insists that Kirk has been the one who's competing. Bones suggests that Kirk's obsession with getting the Enterprise back has blinded him to more important concerns, and his interactions with Decker are indications of that. Meanwhile, Decker bumps into Ilia in the hallway, and they discuss their prior relationship and the intense feelings they both still have for each other. Unexpectedly, a seemingly unimportant shuttle that joins the Enterprise turns out to contain Mr. Spock arriving from planet Vulcan. He makes his way to the bridge and requests to join the crew as science officer while refusing to acknowledge his old friend's positive regard that they express toward him. Later on, Kirk orders Spock to meet with him and Bones in the ship lounge, and through dialogue, Kirk finds out that Spock isn't here because he wants to help his friends like they assumed, but instead he's here because he's following that telepathic summons coming to him from V'ger. Kirk orders Spock to tell him the moment he receives any more telepathic information. After Spock leaves, Bones expresses his concern that Spock may become unpredictable if V'ger is that important to him, a reference back to his prior comments to Kirk about possible consequences of obsession. The Enterprise finally approaches and enters the V'ger cloud and flies deeper and deeper into it. Eventually, an energy beam appears on the bridge and ends up interfacing with a computer terminal and beginning to download vast amounts of sensitive data. Finally, Spock breaks the panel to stop this, and then he's knocked down by the energy beam. And then moments later, that energy beam zaps Ilia and she's suddenly gone. A tractor beam starts pulling the Enterprise deeper into the V'ger cloud, and then the computer announces intruder alert on Deck 5. They go down to investigate and find a mechanical version of Ilia, a probe sent by V'ger to observe the carbon units, i.e. the humans on the Enterprise. When asked, the Ilia probe tells Kirk that the reason V'ger is traveling toward Earth is because V'ger seeks its creator. They take the Ilia probe to sickbay to analyze her and find it is a remarkable duplicate. Outside sickbay, they hypothesize that some of the good human traits of Ilia may at some point accidentally come through since it was copied so precisely, and Kirk suggests that this probe may be their key to understanding and reasoning with V'ger. So the captain assigns Decker to show the probe around the ship and try to work with her. Spock secretly flies outside the ship in a thruster suit and navigates his way into the opening to see what is in the center of the V'ger cloud. Inside, he finds 3D representations of all the various items that V'ger has zapped away throughout its journey, and then he finally comes to a 3D representation of Ilia. He mind melds with the flashing sensor, and then next thing we know, he's floating back to the Enterprise. As he recovers in sickbay, he tells Kirk that he has learned that V'ger is a living machine based on unbelievable technology and pure logic, but that V'ger is barren and cold and cannot understand key essentials of the human experience. Meanwhile, V'ger arrives to Earth and begins transmitting a radio signal. The Ilia probe tells them that V'ger is trying to contact the Creator. When V'ger gets no response, it sends out satellites with the intent of using them to eliminate the carbon units, i.e. the humans, on the planet, assuming that the carbon units have prevented the Creator from responding. Kirk, as a bluff, tells the Ilia probe that he knows why the Creator hasn't been responding, but he will only disclose that information once V'ger removes the satellites. V'ger throws a deadly tantrum, but when Kirk still won't give in, V'ger finally agrees and removes the satellites. Kirk then continues his bluff in hopes of discovering V'ger's core. Kirk informs the probe that he can only disclose the information to V'ger itself rather than to V'ger's probe. They immediately start getting pulled deeper into V'ger by a tractor beam until they come to a central location which begins to fill up with breathable atmosphere. They leave the ship and V'ger materializes a bridge for them to walk across. Once they arrive, they discover that the center of the V'ger cloud is actually an ancient 20th century space probe from Earth called Voyager 6, which had disappeared into a black hole back in the 20th century. It turns out that Voyager 6, after disappearing, had ended up coming to a planet of machine people who repaired it and equipped it to better carry out its programming, after which V'ger had continued traveling through space, evolving while gathering information until it ended up becoming sentient. And the name V'ger was just the misreading of the name Voyager printed on its hull after 3 of the letters faded over time. Kirk calls up to the Enterprise to have them identify and transmit the radio signal that historically would have been used to instruct Voyager 6 to transmit its data and complete its mission. However, once Voyager 6 has begun transmitting that data, it intentionally shorts itself out to prevent completing the mission. The Ilia probe then declares that V'ger must join with its creator. Spock theorizes that Voyager 6 has reached the limits of this universe and must evolve, but cannot do so with the limitations of pure logic. To break into other dimensions and realities, the existence of which cannot be proven, V'ger needs the human quality, the ability to leap beyond logic, and merging with a human could provide this. Despite objections from McCoy, Decker offers himself to V'ger and begins to be transformed in shining light while Kirk and friends watch in wonder. The Ilia probe steps into the light as well as it continues to expand, and the away team rushes away before the expanding light engulfs everything else. Once they return to the Enterprise, the V'ger cloud is completely gone, and they theorize that they have observed the birth of a new kind of life form that exists on a higher plane of existence. Spock suggests this may be the next phase of our evolution, and Kirk says he thinks that we, quote, gave it the ability to create its own sense of purpose, out of our own human weaknesses, and the drive that compels us to overcome them. Then, last of all, it is revealed that Spock does not actually intend to return to Vulcan to finish Kolinar after all, presumably because his experience with V'ger and with his friends on the Enterprise have ended up convincing him that Kolinar and the silencing of the human qualities within him is no longer a goal he wishes to pursue. Kirk gives the order to fly out into space, quote, "out there, that-a-way." And then the film ends with the text on screen that says, "The human adventure is just beginning." And then we get the ending music with the credits, and that's the end of Star Trek the Motion Picture from 1979. I hope you enjoyed this summary. If you did, maybe you'll enjoy my psychological and thematic analysis of the film, which examines the whole film scene by scene. Or perhaps you might enjoy checking out one of my shorter videos that examine various individual parts of the film. Whatever the case, thanks for watching, and I hope I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.